Hey everybody, how's it going? So in an older video, I had gone over microscopes that I was selling and also the new tariffs on them. So to get into why it is I started selling these microscopes, it's because the microscopes that they used to make allowed you to attach this thing to it, this nice little microscope camera adapter, and the shorter one was actually excellent quality and produced an excellent image. Whereas with the newer ones, like the one that Paul has on his desk, you'll notice that this one over here has the longer tube, and those ones do not produce anywhere near as good a quality of image as I demonstrated in this video that you could see down below. Now, I thought that if I simply got that tube that it would then work and look great, but the problem is that that tube does not fit on that microscope over there. So I did a lot of research. I tried to find a proper microscope that I could sell to all of you, and I did. And I figured out that I would actually be able to price match Amazon and Amscope and every other vendor selling microscopes, but I was able to sell this one. This one actually costs about $10 or $15 more. That's the amount of money they're saving by giving you a crappier image. But I was able to find this thing, and I was very happy, and I figured out that I could actually price match Amazon and the other vendors that were selling it, so there wouldn't be any increased cost to you, the end user, to buy the microscope that I used to buy back in 2014 when they were shipping it with a good trinocular port adapter. Now, I did my research beforehand just to see if this would be affected by the tariffs, and as you can see here, if you go to this .gov website, over here, this dataweb.usitc.gov, it does not list this as having a tariff, and hts.usitc.gov also does not list this as having any tariff over here. No tariff for the microscope. So the thing that really confused me is when I got them in, and I got a bill for over $1,000 from the importer, and they said this is covered by a 25% tariff. I was confused by this because the government's website said there was no tariff. Now, what wound up happening is apparently they list where the tariff is on many different sections. So if I want to go to this website, it's not going to show me all the tariffs. For new tariffs, rather than amending the old website or amending the old list or changing this database, there will be a new list that shows you all the new items that have tariffs. That list, TLDR, we're going to talk about all this stuff later, but the too long didn't read aspect of this is that list is separate from the other list. Each time they add tariffs to new items, they don't simply update their old database. They actually make a new page for that specific list of tariffs. And the best part of it all is that list of tariffs, you can't even type Control-F and look for it because it's an image they show you on the screen, not text. So you have to run it through OCR before you can even search through that list, of which there are many spread across different pages on different websites, to find your tariff. The easiest place to find this was actually on some private law firm's website that managed to go through the hell of compiling this all into a nice and easy list. Now, many of you have suggested that I go for a tariff exemption because A, this can be considered a medical device. Tariffs were not designed for the medical and laboratory equipment like this type of microscope. And B, I'm a small business that needs to compete with larger businesses like Amazon and other marketplaces that are selling this, and I'm going to get screwed if I get a tariff. So many of you suggest that I apply for an exemption. The TLDR here, and we're going to explain this in the interview I have with the individual helping me with this up ahead, is that you only have a certain amount of time to apply for a tariff exemption after the tariff comes out. So many of you have been pro-tariff, and if you're pro-tariff, that's cool. You can be pro-tariff. What I'm suggesting is that if you have a tariff, it should be something that's easy to find. So if you go to Best Buy and it says $299 in a television, and you get home and that television, you see that they charge your credit card $500 to $600, that's a problem. If you want $600 for the TV, you should say that the TV is $600 rather than charge $299 and do some sneaky shit on the back end. When it comes to these tariffs, the problem here is not just that it's not advertised in a manner where a small business owner like myself, who's willing to put 45 minutes of research in to see if there's a tariff, can find it. It's also that it's not applied evenly. If you're going to charge me a tariff for importing that product, I think you should be charging others that tariff for importing that product. So the way it works is if I try to import this product and it's after the tariff exemption, I cannot apply for the tariff exemption. However, another company that was in the business already could apply for that tariff exemption. Now, I want you to think about the basis of how competition works in business. I got into my field. The very reason I got into my field is because I saw that the all landscape of people doing what I was doing were charging terrible prices, offering terrible turnaround times, and not great service. So I saw that they would say it's $149 for this, and then when you show up, it's actually $199 because they say, gotcha, it's an extra 50 for service, or it takes a week or two. And these were companies that had been established for several years when I got into the business. I saw, I'm willing to make $100 for 5 or 10 minutes of my time. Let me do this, and I'll actually advertise honestly. I got into the business competing with them after them. We didn't all start at the same time. Now, if there was some sort of law that were in place that protected people who were already in the business by making sure that everybody else who applied to try to get into this business afterward would have to pay 25 to 30% more for the same thing, how do you think that would affect competition? Let's take that to microscopes. So I'm buying these microscopes. I like them. I use them for my staff. I suggest people buy them. Then many of you come up to me and say, Louis, the image quality that I had when I went to your shop and took a class with you is nothing compared to what it is on this thing that I bought. What the hell went on? So I decide to go over. I buy one of those microscopes. I realize that they're using the garbage trinocular port adapter. And after I realize they're using the garbage port adapter, I decide, you know what? Let me see if I can sell these because I'm pretty sure they're skimping on some $5 or $10 here. To some bean counter decided to use the crappy trinocular camera port adapter thing, and let me see if I can find the same thing that they're selling, but something that is a little bit more suitable for what it is I want, which is good camera quality. And I find it, but here's the thing: when the tariff came out, they were able to apply for an exemption because they were already in the business of selling microscopes. I wasn't already in the business of selling microscopes, so I couldn't. So here's the kicker. Not only is there a tariff that wasn't advertised in the government's website, but that is a tariff that the very people who are selling these microscopes probably are not paying. But if you want to start a company selling them, or I want to start a company selling them, we'll pay them. That is the most anti-competitive thing you can imagine. And the reason that this kind of bothers me, regardless of what you think about politics, regardless of who you vote for, is for many people saying that, the elites have this power and the elites have gotten away with this, that, and the other. I find it really interesting when a law comes out that only negatively affects people who are trying to compete with the established elites. If I want to buy this and I want to sell this and I want to compete with Amazon, there is a good chance that Amazon, it's not just that they're paying less money than I am because they have more buying power, this, that, and the other from the vendor. I get that. But they are actually probably exempt from getting feed by the government where I will get that fee if I decide to purchase this product by the government. And I just figured this out today. And I am not eligible to even apply for a tariff exemption. It's not that I could apply for a tariff exemption and get denied. I can't even apply for it. Now, you may say, Louis, well, there should be a tariff, and you shouldn't be exempt from it. Why should you get a tariff exemption? Buy something else. Okay. How about the companies that did get tariff exemptions for this that are selling it? Does it even matter that the tariff went into place? Because if that's the way this works, in effect, the tariff is not even going to discourage purchasing from China. It's simply going to discourage people from going into that field. I have no problem with you making a law about imports, exports, this, that, or the other, having your tariff. But if you're going to have your tariff, I believe that you should post that tariff where everybody can see it, be consistent. I can't say iPhone 6 screen repair is $70 on my website and charge somebody $100 when they come in the store, but apparently government can. And B, apply that tariff evenly. If I have a price on my website, I don't just get to say when people show up, oh yeah, I'm going to charge you an additional 25 or 30% just because you found my website after that person found my website. That would make people pretty pissed off. You can have coupons every now and then and deals, but this is not the way that this is supposed to work. But I would like to hear what all of you think, and I'm going to speak with the person that was helping me through this entire process. She's very good at helping startups find capital, whether through tax rebates and abatements from the government or through private investors. And she has decided, since she was my friend, to help me with this matter.
Okay, so I'd like to start off with some background. It's not like I'm a complete noob. First of all, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not pretending to be a lawyer. This is in no way legal advice. Do not take this to the bank. Do not rely upon this. Do your own research. Don't be stupid, Don't be an idiot and base your entire business life on something you heard on Louis Rossman's channel. I love you, Louis, but yeah, don't ruin your life. So I'm no stranger to dealing with governments. I have spent a lot of my life trying to get money for companies doing research and helping them fund projects. So, like, if someone wants to make a cathode for a new kind of lithium sulfur battery chemistry, we used to go around helping them get procure the funding, um, uh, match it with match private investment with government investment. Then I used to work a bit in tax breaks for researchers, and like, so I have been on conference calls with HMRC, which is the UK equivalent of the IRS. I have dealt with somewhat angry inspectors from there. I have talked to them. I have interfaced with that system. And I have peripherally interfaced with the EU. So I have some degree of experience with working with government, which is something I'm not proud of, but c'est la vie. Because if you are doing any kind of science at some level, it always comes down to the government's pocketbook. So now let's get started. If you're a noob, as I am, with the American system, I understand how theoretically it's supposed to work. But if you're new to interfacing with the American system, let's get started. How exactly you learn? Let me start screen sharing.
Sure.
There we go.
I'm going to remove myself from the screen right now so you can see what she's showing you. All right, so what are we looking at here?
So this is first of all, it took a long time to figure this out in of itself. The As Lewis said, the tariff list website, until very recently, it didn't actually display that there was a special tariff. Now, the reason for that is how the Trump administration, the president's administration, has implemented this. So there's a difference between an administrative action, which is changes in rules and procedures for how a government agency is going to conduct its operations, and some kind of law which applies, or trade agreement which applies tariffs broadly. So in this specific case, um, Trump used Trump, not himself, but Trump's administration used Section 301, which is a specific aspect of the 1974 Trade Act, which authorizes the president to take all appropriate action, including retaliation, to obtain the removal of any act, policy, or practice of a foreign government that violates an international trade agreement or is unjustified, unreasonable, discriminatory, and that burdens and or restricts U.S. commerce. Yeah, this law was taken into place, was applied with the best of intentions back in 1974. It has been enacted a few times before, um, and it was renewed by President Clinton. It just keeps getting renewed. Okay, so we have there have been trade sanctions on, for example, Ukraine. By imposing prohibitive tariff on metals, footwear, and other imports, because the USTR concluded that a company had failed to enact legislation to enforce copyright law in relation to music CDs and their export. So basically, if you were pirating Nickelback or Linkin Park back then, um, the U.S. Trade Organization would came down on you, and they use these means to crack down on Ukraine to get them to comply with U.S. IP law, which is all fine and good. Now, because it's not a systemic thing, it means that there aren't many recourses there, and it's kind of confusing. So the very first thing I ever saw is this. This is the first page I saw. Like, it took me a long while to figure out how exactly these sanctions or this trade war was conducted. Like, 301 was something I didn't learn after Googling and spending like at least 2 hours on it with Lewis. I still remember when Lewis called me up and he said, "Oh, I think these customs guys are ripping me off. This is they're applying this duty that shouldn't be there." And I'm like, "Huh, I will help you out. Let me take a look." And I took a look and it said nothing. And then we emailed them, and then they said, "Oh no, it still applies." And then we're like, "How does it apply?" And then we spent 2 to 3 hours googling and talking this out to find just that it was Section 301. Okay, so how to navigate the Section 301 tariff process? Know your HTS subheading, and this in of itself is not really easy. Like, for example, let's open up this link. Come on.
How is your
Okay, so
internet
this is
faster than mine? I know where you're
um
located, and I loaded this website slower than you did.
it's capitalism, I guess, you know. Um so where do I exactly find an HTS? How do I do that? I can't figure this out. Let's go to external links. Foreign tariff Schedule B for the classification of imports. USTR, Customs and Border Protection. Huh. It doesn't make any sense. So imagine you don't know anything, right? You haven't gone through the rigmarole. You come to this website and you want to figure out what sub category your product falls into. You can't immediately figure it out. Okay, let's do a quick Google search then. HTS codes. Look up.
Anonymously Googling through DuckDuckGo. She
Yeah.
has taste.
So instead of actually I'm still logged into Google. So instead of actually redirecting you to this website, by the way, this banner wasn't there when we were searching for it. This happened a few days ago, apparently. So let's start with the heading of microscope. It comes cigar and cigarette boxes, microscope slides, and micro cover glasses. Compound optical microscopes, including those for photomicrography, cinema micrography, or microprojection parts and accessories thereof. This is the section. 9011.10 is stereoscopic microscopes. 9011.10.40 with suffix .00 provided with the means of photographing the image. Now, what does that mean? Like, we're all used to government stuff being more vague, but this isn't the case with HMRC. They are the UK's IRS. They are hyper specific in their rules. I can give you examples of that. You can actually access their entire manual online, but I'll do that later. So provided with a means of photographing the image, does that mean it comes with a camera attached? Does it mean it comes with a lens attached to take that image? What exactly does this mean? Now, as you can see here, it says it's free. And then there's a number 2. What is the number 2? The column 2 is those that are outside of US trade agreements. Stuff like, say, if you're importing from North Korea, if it wasn't under sanctions, or Cuba, that would fall under section 2. Other microscopes for photomicrography, cinema micrography, or microprojection. So this is the same code again, 3.9%. What's the difference between this and this one? 901120.40. And what's the difference between this one? This one? Parts and accessories, microscopes. And other than other optical microscopes, diffraction apparatus. Clearly, this is not applicable. This is a very different kind of microscopy. So it's clear now that our product is one of these. It's either this, 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 or this. Okay. So now let's try to look up whether or not it falls under tariff schedule. Yeah. How do we do that? We do that by going back to this place. Okay, so we have to go through each individual web page, right? Let's do that. What is this docket ID? Okay, let's click that. This is the announcement of of the tariff itself, and it's not searchable. As you can see over here, unless you know how to do OCR, this isn't searchable.
So is that an image?
Yeah, it's
That's
an
a
image.
JPEG?
Yes.
You can't even control F to find your tariff code.
Nope. You can't.
That's
Now,
a .gov
there's
website.
yes, that's regulations.gov. How to describe your product? Okay.
Their
What are
website
these
cannot be
things?
control F.
Yes,
I didn't
exactly.
even recognize that in this entire process.
Yeah. So
That's painful.
we go down to the bottom. They now have included this. This wasn't there before. Do you know how I actually managed to navigate this? I went around and I found a private website by some international trade, customs, and export law uh, firm. And I went out and I downloaded their lists, which are, I'm guessing they copy pasted or something, they did OCR or whatever. And then I went around searching for 9/11. Oh, there we go. There were other lists as well. In this one, it wasn't found. So I went through each of the four lists, and I kept trying to find that. So finding out whether or not your you have a tariff, at least at the time when we were looking into this, and we looked into this until at least last month, last 2 weeks. Is actually fairly non-trivial. Finding your specific product code is non-trivial. Finding if you are if your product falls in that specific product code is non-trivial. And then finding out which tranche of tariffs, like there are four tranches: the first, the second, like the list one, the $34 billion action, the $16 billion action, the $200 billion action, and the last one is list 4, which hasn't been identified yet.
So wait, just to get this clear, for each one of these, there is a separate list. So for each different set of tariffs, there's a different list that says what is and what is not covered.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Exactly.
not like they're not all together.
They're not all together. You can theoretically you'll have to go to either third party or maybe find some sub page within their system which lists them all together.
So
There might be some page out there that lists
hmm.
them all together.
So to be clear,
So
A, there's a website that tells you a list of tariff codes and then a list of the tariffs, but then there's separately, B, a list of tariffs for the each time they decided to put more tariffs on things, and C, that list is in a JPEG that is not control Fable without OCR.
yes, yes. And it says even here for product exclusion status, visit the product exclusion process section on 34 billion trade action. Like they list each one individually. Now, this search box, again, I swear it's new. People can probably web archive it. This wasn't there before. And it's not quite clear what you're supposed to search for. So 9/11. It's not working. Well, okay. Um, yeah. So this is the official. These are the official instructions. So let's go over it. Step 1: know your HTS subheading. We did that. Find your HTS subheading. We did that. Now, this is the interesting step. Submit or comment um, or exclusion request based on your HTS subheading is open. The due date will include a hyperlink. The electronic docket where comment or product extension request may be submitted. So originally, I had seen this
It's 12:45.
PDF that was linked to by the government website.
Can you say that again?
Then when I
Because a French clock just made everybody deaf.
oh, I'm so sorry. I shall give me a second. I'll disable that. Mind if
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
Okay, German clock. A German clock made everybody deaf. Let's be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, it helps with time management, you know. Like I have lawyer friends who measure time in 6 minute intervals, and I was like, inspired by it. I wanted to measure time in 15-minute intervals.
She used to have a
So
French clock, and she changed it to German for me, so I appreciate that. So yeah, I still
yes,
I'm used to complaining about the French
he
clock that deafens me.
he hates my French heritage. God damn you, Louis. Okay, so I found this originally when we first started looking into it, and it says here procedures to consider a request for exclusion of particular products from the determination of action pursuant to Section 301, China's acts, policies, and practices related to technology transfer, intellectual property, and innovation. Agency, Office of the United States Trade Representative, action, notice and request for comments. Trade representative has determined that appropriate action to obtain the elimination of China's acts, policies, and practices related to technology transfer, intellectual property, and innovation requires the imposition of an addition ad valorem. In case you're wondering what that means, let's quickly look up. Levying tax or customs duties in proportion to the estimated value of the object. Valorem is in proportion. Duty of 25% on certain products from China classified in certain enumerated subheadings of the Harmonized Tariff Schedule of the United States, HTS US. C 83 FR 28710. The June 20th notice also announced that the trade representative would establish a process by which US stakeholders may request that particular products classified within the covered tariff subheading be excluded from additional duties. Today's notice sets out the specific procedures and criteria related to the requests for product exclusions and opens up a docket for the receipt of exclusion requests. Dates: particular any replies or responses to the exclusion request exclude by October 9th address strongly prefers this supplementary information. So, okay, first of all, you might not realize this, but this date isn't the actual date. Um, this date is different for each one, each and every single one of these lists. And Lewis started importing it. So Lewis started importing it a year, nearly 8 months or so after the request the docket expired. So I thought, in my naivete, this was these responses to a request, etc. Must receive request. This probably was a rolling time period. This was probably some specific thing at the time because it was so outdated. Why would they have this, etc. So I spent my entire time going through this and figuring out how to um, word it specifically in the way that that they would accept it. Like I spent a lot of time thinking about how we would talk about the dimensions, how we would talk about this, because check this out. A number of interested persons asserted that specific products within a particular heading only were available from China, and that the imposition of specific products would cause severe economic harm to U.S. interests, and that these specific products were not strategically important or related to the Made in China 2025 program. So it keeps on repeating this Made in China 2025 program. This is they're in China's initiative to have higher levels of manufacturing available in China. So there was this very famous example of China being able to produce a ball pen from start to finish because there was a very particular part, which is the ball itself and the nozzle, which they couldn't produce because they were unable to perform the exact type of machining, get the high grade of steel or whatever component or the alloy, specific alloy that they use for this, because the allowances and the tolerances there are microns. So this is related to that initiative. And they're saying that if you would like to do so in general, this is based upon my reading, not just this particular document, you need to demonstrate in different ways that it is not strategically important, or it's not related, does not relate to the Made in China 2025 or other Chinese industrial programs. So as a Westerner, that's really difficult. Like, let's say you're not a China expert. How exactly do you go around justifying, in all good faith, that Lewis's microphones that he's importing are not a part of some strategic, announcement by the Chinese government in Chinese that has to do with their Made in China 2025 program? How, how do you do that as a Westerner? Do you Google search it? Do you Google search whether microscopes are included? Let's Google search. Must include microscopes. I mean, you don't get anything of any consequence if you do that. I'm guessing that all the relevant documentation, etc., to prove your specific point, that your specific thing is not related to this specific program, or the factory is not receiving, uh, you know, some kind of subsidy from the Chinese government. The way is not really accessible to the layperson, even if that layperson, such as me, has spent her entire life researching shit. Um, yeah. So let's keep going, keep going. After requests of exclusion, they will have interested persons will have 14 days to respond. Blah blah blah. So, and I just read all of this. Then I went and I saw. There we go. There is and there's this different notice of the same kind. There we go. Then I read this one. Product specific exclusion request should contain the following: a comprehensive physical description of the product, including but not limited to form. If the product is a chemical falling under Chapter 29 of HST-US, a description of approximate content of all constituents, and a reference number promulgated by the Chemical Abstract Services (CAS). Proposed draft tariff language referred should not contain references to trade names or colloquial terminology. You should not use subjective terms. Additional tips: prior CBP rulings may also be important. So I spent some time trying to look up prior rulings because I tried to be thorough. And this is the one ruling I came up with. And I was like, maybe there are other rulings. No, there are not. And this itself is actually kind of complicated because you to search through this and to find specific cases, this art of research takes a very, very long time. So I spent so much time reading through all of this different stuff and trying to figure out, what does it mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? That I did not, I missed something really crucial. And just, and this is the big reveal at the end. Okay. Um, so let's go back to the big process. Let's say um, you you want to submit one of those destination 16 billion. There we go. Uh, you go to the FAQs, and you ask, oh, how do we exclude it? Who may request it? Subheading Annex A of the notice published here. I looked that up, as you can see. To submit requests, enter document ID USTR. Okay, let's do it. So I went on regulations.gov. Where is regulations.gov? Oh, you. It's a very ugly website, so it's very recognizable. So this is the one. I entered this. And then I started going through all of these things. And I got really, really confused. Where do I submit it? How do I do it? You know? Um, it turns out, and this took me a while to figure out, and I figured it out today. You can't. You can only, because it's an administrative rule change, there is no process to do it, to do an ongoing kind of rolling changes, right? If you were to go today, and let's pick out a random item from this. If DC Motors Nisoi of an output exceeding 14.92 kilowatts, or parts of a flange, take-up cartridge, and hanger units, let's say you're building some kind of electric aircraft, and if you wanted to import this for yourself and your customers, and you are a new business, you had to file this several months ago before you even realized that you wanted to do this, because this is an administrative rule change. So that means that the window of time you have to submit your request for exclusion is a very small amount of time after it is announced. I thought that because I could go here and look it up, that there would be a rolling kind of thing going on. And I very naively and foolishly thought that this meant that the list 4.8 was like cumulative, and like it would include all of the previous ones. It does not. It only includes the products on that specific list. So unless you are or have somehow have the foresight to see 6 months, 10 months into the future and decide, hey, I might do that for an unspecified business plan. So let me apply for an exemption, which is a completely different process and which is actually quite complicated to apply for. Because what they haven't showed you is the actual form. The actual form itself is fairly complicated. So these attachments, um, they have to be really specific. CBP rulings, photos, specification sheets, and previous import documentation, public inspection approximately 30 minutes after submission. Please provide a complete and detailed particular concern, a detailed again, you have to name the exact material it's made from. You have to name the exact process. You have to provide as much detail as physically possible about its makeup in the very specific way that they want it to be, right? I spent so much time thinking about this. I spent a lot of time trying to read up about this. I asked Lewis to find successful applications. I asked like someone who had gone through the process. Turns out there's no one we can find because it's usually law firms who do this, not individual small businesses. So yeah, you're out of luck. Congratulations. Yay. So at the end of all of this process, at the end of all of this thought, like research, months of research and reading and trying to figure out, hey, how can I specifically word what a microscope is and put it into this? I come to realize, hey, I can't actually submit this because it's not on that particular list. And that's not immediately obvious or noted anywhere. Like, as you've seen throughout the website, um, how to navigate the
Sorry, just can
tariff
you repeat?
process,
What was the
etc.
reason you gave? You said because it wasn't on that list, you couldn't submit it?
Yes,
Which list is that? Because just for those who are losing track.
this list. There's a list each time.
Okay, so every time they add a tariff, there's a list of them, and you can only apply for an exemption if it's on a specific list.
Yes, and only
Ah,
after a specific time after that particular list. For your case,
so
it was closed, I think, May 22nd or so.
okay, so just to
October.
just to recap, so to get on the same page. So A, one website says there's no tariff when there actually is a tariff. B, when you do your digging to find the website that actually says it has a tariff, that is a JPEG file that is you need to use optical image recognition to even see. Or what was not optical image recognition, something.
Optical character
Yeah, optical
recognition.
character
OCR.
recognition to even see. And C, there are different lists. So there's not one list of these are all the items that have this tariff on it. There are numerous lists each time new tariffs are put on there, and you have to go through each of those lists after putting it through some sort of OCR because it's not control Fable. And if you want to apply for an exemption, you can only apply for an exemption within a short time window after that tariff has been put into place, so that old established businesses are not paying the tariff, but any new established business that wishes to compete with that first business does pay the tariff.
And it gets even better. It doesn't say so on any of their material. How to navigate this selection, the process.
So just to be clear, so
It is
let's say people thought that this tariff should be paid. Screw China, screw the people importing from China. The people who are doing the most imports from China are going to be the people who probably are the largest ones. They're probably going to have an attorney on staff for this. They're going to be the people that apply for the exemption quicker. So the person who is most likely to import the most items is going to be the one that avoids the tariff.
yes. Okay, because look at this. These are
Why?
the following guidelines. Okay, let me just backtrack quickly. These are the filing guidelines. It doesn't say here anywhere. It doesn't say anywhere that it's only for a restricted time frame. And it gets even better because if you look into the original intent, burdens or restricts U.S. commerce. That was unjustified, unreasonable, or discriminatory actions by someone else. So in this case, the United States government has taken a tool that prevents foreign governments from doing something like this, and it has done it on small businesses by them. So this is like self-mutilation. Hey, at least someone else isn't cutting your arm off. You chopped it off yourself. Congratulations.
Yeah, because what I find interesting here is that if, let's say you actually believe that the tariff should be applied, the thing that drives me nuts is that it's not applied equally, that, Amazon or other companies selling microscopes are going to be exempt from this, whereas people who say, hey, I'd like to compete with you because I saw that you decided to save 10 or 20 bucks by selling this shitty camera mount. The people who are coming in to compete with you are the people who are going to be the people who are tariffed, not you. Those people who are tariffed are then going to decide to not sell it because there's no profit in it, meaning that all the profit and all the sales are going to go to the first several companies that already have their exemptions. So the tariff doesn't even wind up being collected, nor does it wind up stopping people from importing. It simply means more imports for the first place that was able to get in before the time passed.
And it just keeps getting better. The businesses that are hit
Tell us
with these
more, Anne.
tariffs. So imagine you were a lab. You're a small time lab, and you want to do this because you are slicing brains up to image them. There's a specific story behind this, but this is the kind of stuff that makes Lewis very queasy. Let's say you are slicing brains up to make a map of the human brain. And you just got your research grant and you just decided to do this. You possibly couldn't have known like a year ago that you wanted to do it and apply for an exemption. So you will have to pay more. The same applies for you doing a personal project, because some of these items on these lists are actually like common for hobbyists, common for people. The completely normal items that you might buy on Amazon, like something like a rug, like a particular kinds of polyester rugs or clothing or whatever, they're included. Hobby supplies are included. So you will have to pay that tariff when it comes into the US if you're buying through one of those many Chinese resellers. But the large sellers who buy it, import it into the US, then slap their brand name on it, and then they resell it for like an additional inflated cost, won't have to pay it instead. So you are punished either way.
I find
You're
it really
punished in every
interesting how
direction.
I just find it interesting how the end result of this is not actually. It's not even tariffing people. It's simply reducing competition in the specific marketplaces where these tariffs were put into place. Because if you were able to get in quickly enough to file for your exemption, you don't pay a tariff. It's a way of protecting not even a specific government, not even a specific region, but specific companies that got in first from competition from new companies. If there was a way that I could ensure that anybody else entering the repair business had to charge 25 to 30% more money to get the exact same amount of money as I am, imagine that. Imagine if that was the way it was in your business, in your job.
check this out. These are one of the items.
Once, let me just
Parts
switch
and
over to Zoom.
accessories for machines of heading 8456, 8461 used to make parts of heading 8517 are computers. Um, Cast iron parts, parts used for hand, pneumatic, rotary type, suitable for metalworking, gas operated machinery, apparatus, appliances, etc. So a lot of your viewers, and I know it's like a mostly male hobbyist kind of segment demographic, will sooner or later, at some point of their life, buy stuff that's on this list. The tariff will apply to them. It won't apply to the company that imports that shit and slaps their brand name on it and sells it to you for an extra price. So you are getting punished twice over. You have like competing pressures. One is one of the companies that have already, through their foresight, because they're doing this, they're like rebranding Chinese stuff, um, done it, and you trying to seek a better deal, or trying to go to the source and buy it through whatever Amazon or like Alibaba, whatever. You will have to pay the tariff both ways, because even in the first case, they will try to pass the costs onto you. So the net result is that all the prices go up, because even if they file for exemption, do you think they're going to tell the consumers that? Like, for example, um, iRobot, I found this while researching, actually started taking their parts, and they started trying to assemble them in Malaysia so that the tariff wouldn't apply to them. I'm willing to bet you good money that iRobot, when through whatever chance they can get, will raise that price anyway, because they have to go through this extra hassle. They had to open up a new factory in Malaysia to avoid this specific tariff, because Malaysia is not a country which this tariff applies to. Companies are going to do these maneuvers. They're going to do all these complicated things, like Apple is now apparently assembling their ultra uber 60,000, $45,000 computers, Mac Pros, um, in the US. Now what does it actually mean? The assembly means that the components are probably being made in China. Then they're probably going to be assembled in places like Malaysia or Philippines or somewhere else. Then these boards will make their way to the US, where then they will be put together, and this part of the tariff will be exempt into the Mac. And then guess what? This extra cost will be added on to you because it is made in the USA. You're screwed either way.
Yeah, so that is about it. If any of you want to know why it is that I've decided to stop selling the microscopes after we sold out, this is it. Thank you very much to everybody who bought our limited edition. And as always, I hope you learned something.